News, right. There's a lot of news and we're going to do it in 3 parts today. Important stuff outside of the game, stuff in the game right now, and stuff about what's next. So let's just roll. Okay, story number 1. Well, we've got another new MMO coming from a pretty damn major ex-Blizzard staffer, which of course does mean another studio with tasty money to go out poaching with. And this time round, it's Ghostcrawler, Greg Street, having went through a family tragedy, decided to leave Riot Games, and he's began a new adventure, a new post-Riot chapter of his life, and is embarking on a new MMORPG project. And he has, we found out, hired Brian Halinka from the World of Warcraft team. Brian was somewhat of a mentee back whenever Greg was working on World of Warcraft. Most recently, he was heading up a bunch of PvP and combat design stuff. From what I understand, their PvP plans have been a little bit more longer in the tooth because they've had to staff teams up, and we haven't exactly seen the fruits of that labor just yet. As for this then, look, expect more, but likely not too many more poaches happening here because this is in the very early stages. As for what we know, it is an MMO or is MMO-like. We know that Greg has found a strategic partner, so likely a big investor who has bought in on Greg's vision, and right now he is looking for elite-level leaders, really, to staff up his teams. So, pretty interesting. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a while away. Which gives me a nice segue because, well, we are actually cooking up some more Pale Beyond stuff right now, but we've actually kicked off on what we're doing next. It's what all of my tomorrow is going to be. Yeah, it'll be a while before I can show any of that off. Patreon members, it'll be to you guys first. We're experimenting new things there. I've hired up to let us engage in far more open game development, and we'll be kicking that off when the time is right. For now, though, I've got regular behind-the-scenes content going up there, weekly vlogs. We've got early access to videos. We've got our lore podcast, which is now its 4th episode of its new run. Guys are going really in deep on really some of the coolest stuff that's going on right now. And of course, we've got the loot. And want to call out as well for these, right? You know, if you like Dragonology and stuff as a kid, obviously pretty awesome. Flip it around though, these are actually all D&D compatible scenarios with, like, you know, stats and stuff if you actually want to, you know, play some of this. So that's another thing should probably mention. That's what's going on. So if you want a bunch of content from us, loot straight from the artists who work in the game, links are right below. And with that said, let's get back into the grisly business of our next story. So this is a bit of a grim one. Did Mike Ybarra really fire a dev of 9 years tenure just because of a joke written for a venture company Goblin? Well, that's kind of what people are saying. We certainly don't know if it was Ybarra literally, but allegedly it is somebody very high up at the company noticing some dialogue in the Forbidden Reach from a venture company Goblin. They got offended by that, and then they fired Eric Covington, allegedly without really much process or room for remedy. And in a funny situation where the offending lines were actually shown off in promotional materials for World of Warcraft patch 10.0.7. Now, the body of the offending jokes were created as a team. Ultimately, though, the hammer fell on Eric. Now, we first knew he had left about 2 months ago when he announced that he was looking for work. And somewhat suspiciously, we knew that he wasn't looking for work voluntarily. The jokes in question are from the loot goblins who work for the venture company on the Forbidden Reach. These are jokes that are exactly in line with how the venture company have been portrayed since vanilla, you know? But hey, maybe the venture company just rings a little bit differently given recent news. This is obviously all amid a backdrop of Blizzard's increasing employee attrition over the mandated RTO, where we even have a producer on the WoW team talking about them realistically having to think about what features and bits of content they have to cut or delay because people are turning in their notices. We've seen this on Twitter in real time. I mean, I'm playing a priest right now. I absolutely love the design of the class. I love the new tier set that I've got. So it's pretty sad that the artist who actually designed that tier set is currently working at Riot Games, because I really liked their work in the game that I was interested in. Now, we also have members of the Diablo 4 team talking to the press, saying that they're worried about their ability to deliver on its seasonal content, because they've had a lot of resignations and also know that many people in their teams are planning to leave after the game ships. Of course, in doing this, and in the way that they've done it, Blizzard leadership are making enemies of, in this very specific case, their own quest team. From what we understand, from what Eric has said, his former colleagues are seemingly furious and were very supportive of him. Now, the quest team is the very team that, as with the recent Blue Dragon questline and the Tier questline that just activated as of this week, is in fact making some of the best content that the game has seen in years. There's that rumor that this is coming from Mike Ybarra. It's because somebody speculated that it was Ybarra and then Covington liked that tweet, but of course by no means is that a confirmation. It is absolutely a bad look, and before we get into the video game news, which actually is pretty cool, there's the final bit here. So, final bit of spice. TLDR, Variety magazine ran a big puff piece on Bobby. Look at his little cute eyes. Aww. Bobby, he's got some real bangers in it. You know, he's saying he's really a union man on account of his mother being a teacher, and how he's the only Fortune 500 leader, CEO, to be in a union, which of course is because he literally had to be in order to have his bit part in the movie Moneyball, which I don't think means what he thinks it means. Yeah, it's pretty rough. The article characterizes him as being a disarmingly warm man with an air of, Ricky someone like can-do energy. It's very bizarre. My news team prepared a really awesome deep dive that tears this thing into pieces. I actually just recorded it. It's awesome. It's up on our news channel if you actually want to dive into this. But what's fascinating to me is that even in a world where Eric gets yeeted out for a joke, one that Blizzard even included on their own marketing materials, we've now got a host of Blizzard staff who are out in the open furious on Twitter, and I commend their bravery for that. And before anybody says, oh, it's just a tweet, well, it's a lot more than that when you're responding to somebody being fired over a joke. Pretty crazy. And with that, let's get to the bit that we actually care about, which is the video game. The video game that's made by developers who make cool shit for us. Number one, we got the trading post because it's a new month. It's a chunky one. 5,750 tendies to get everything. That's a lot of tendies. Blizzard have consistently said that their intent is that you do not purchase everything every month, that this is just a bunch of stuff that will be continually, mixed in, mixed out, rotated about. It's pretty big. We've got 3 mounts. We've got Quox, that's a recolor of Sharkbait for completing the log, the Cindermane Charger, which is a retired recruit-a-friend mount, and the Royal Swarmer, which is a recolor of an A3 mount. The Halajar recolored armor ensemble looks pretty damn sweet, and we've got a bunch of really nice off-pieces, I think, versus last month. It's a significantly more interesting, significantly more interesting offering. I have to wonder, though, I don't know about you, but I've got a lot of spare tendies, because I haven't really bought much in, the recent 1 or 2 months, because they haven't been as strong. I wonder if they're being a bit agile, making this a little bit more of a chunky month, because they kind of know that people are sitting in plenty of tendies. And when you have plenty of tendies, the value you assign to your tendies is going to be lower because they're plentiful. Okay, let's hop then into some Mythic Plus. We got to deal with the afflicted affix that we're all afflicted with. Don't you love wee lads all the way across the room at the other side of the big fiery laser beam? No bother, great. This is an affix that is just interacting rather poorly with dungeon layouts, kind of as if the lessons of quaking haven't been fully applied. So I'd say, Blizzard, here's what you do, right? Play a voice line or an alert whenever they spawn. Give them proper nameplates as well. And the reason why here is that if they spawn very far away or in the middle of a very big pool, it's hard to even notice them. And if they spawn directly on a big ad or a boss, it actually is very hard to click on them. These mobs use the very tiny, friendly NPC Blizzard health bars that cannot be displayed, larger or customized much via add-ons. So you really need to make sure that, you have these enabled and that you check the larger nameplates option in the game settings. It's weird, the UI does not support this design. Also, don't have them spawn in boss fights, especially when their visuals are so easy to miss. Even if your group has multiple dispels, the pseudo-random spawn could overlap with a very important dispel, and then you're just stuck with minus 100% haste. So yeah, not great. But there is actually some good news. We've got even more quality of life improvements, starting off with an Athalrus, and this is a big one. The burning chains that are found throughout the smoldering barracks area of the dungeon no longer damage players, and that means you can use them a lot more. They can do insane damage to trash mobs. So if you do a really big pull, you tank near a chain, and then you get somebody in the group to click and drag it over the mobs, and then this will do a lot of damage, and it will turn an otherwise rather tight dungeon timer into one that can feel pretty free if you're getting the bosses clean, because you're saving so much time with the trash. So that's pretty good. Then the previous cheese strategy for Magma Tusk that involved the Draconic Tincture, that has been fixed. Now, this was a potion that was on the table near the entrance to the boss area. It's used for an achievement. You could throw it on the boss midway through its first cast of Lava Spray to instantly give the boss 2 stacks of Magma Tentacle, but preventing it from gaining any more throughout the fight. Now, each stack of Magma Tentacle increases the duration of the Magma Eruption dot, up to a maximum of 20 seconds when it's at 5 stacks. So if you did this, it would just make the fight so much easier to heal through, especially on a high tyrannical key, right? And you maybe would even be forced to use group-wide immunities, very heavy defensives, and maybe just a bit of Jesus on your side to get you through it. Now, to compensate on this fix, well, Magma Eruption damage has been nerfed by 20% and Lava Spray by 15%. More may be needed, though, again, to address with the higher keys. Vortex Pinnacle then. This is great. The cooldown for greater heal on the Temple Adept mobs has been increased, which is nice. The Skyfall Star AoE damage has been reduced 20%, meaning you might not get insta-nuked when you're clearing those ads, or like many people, you're maybe just running around the thing and skipping them. Then the Skyfall Novas, which are the ads in the last boss, their health has actually been nerfed again by another 20%. Yeah. That mob is the one big deciding factor on whether your group will time or even finish the key, again, if it's a higher key, because the amount of damage needed to kill these guys in the very short time frame is insane on, again, tyrannical high keys. So look, credit to the devs, they've actually been real on top of their shit with this stuff, and yeah, I think we all commend that. Next then, Silver Hand is out. This is the continuation of the tier quest line. I'm not going to spoil it here. Just play the bloody thing. It's content in the game now. But I do have a point of feedback, please. One thing that I know people love in FF14 is that they can just sit down when the new patch comes out and they just have a, 4 to 6 hours of story and they can just play it and, get immersed, like how you play the campaign of a video game. Now, you guys know the macro narrative design qualms that I have with the 10.1 main campaign. We did a whole video on it, but I think that we can all agree that the likes of the Blue Dragon quest are absolutely stellar in their quality. But I do have a fear, especially with the Blue quest, because it came out a few weeks late. We didn't really know when it was coming out. It wasn't communicated that well, and I just worry that so many people never see any of this. And this is in fact the best stuff in the game. People probably logged in, they felt that day one was super lacking in content, they felt, logged in for the new patch, and maybe I understand that the season's next week, but, they don't feel good, and then maybe they're just like, this isn't really what I hoped it would be, I'm just going to play something else and not do my subscription. So that's my feedback, Blizzard. You have really awesome content, but I do feel that this way that it's being doled out every week. Last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it is, we get the Blue Dragon quest, and then this week we get the tier quest. And people don't really know unless Wowhead tells them. I just feel that that is really underutilizing the content that they've got. I think that if this stuff is presented as a big campaign, or is at least there so that you can just play it all and that narrative content is there, that people can just sit down, get super immersed, and just... Because, I would rather just spend a Saturday, go super into the lore, really enjoy the story, play it like an old school campaign, and then just walk away from it feeling really good. And I think FF14 proves that if you leave people feeling super chuffed after day one of your patch, they're just going to be really jazzed about your game. I think they're missing a trick. The good thing is they do actually have the content to back it up, though. All right, PTR. This is more exciting. Let's talk about what's coming next. The Infinites. Since the Burning Crusade, the Infinite Dragons have looked bloody class, and we're now getting into the action. We've got an Infinite Flight recolor of the 10.1 World Gear, and look at it, it's great! Yeah, I love it. There's also a bronze colored version too, and we've even got Infinite Flight dragon riding customizations as well. And, you know, given what was foreshadowed with Chromie and Eternus in 10.0, in the, you know, the Temporal Conflux storyline, could a splinter of the Infinite Dragonflight, or maybe some of the Infinite Dragonflight themselves, end up taking up that 6th space atop Valdrakken? I mean, you know, the idea, truth, potential, bronze, infinite. You know, they could kind of work. Now, speaking of that, the new Mega Dungeon is testable on PTR. To be honest, I'm not going to touch it in PTR because, I mean, A, I don't have the time, and B, I'd rather do it on my live character because, honestly, Blizzard's Mega Dungeons are some of the most exciting content that they add. Season 4 of Shadowlands was an absolute joy on account of having those Mega Dungeons because they're just so well designed and so fun, so I can't wait for that. But next, we've got Time Rifts. Alright, Time Rifts are our new world content feature in 10.1.5, sending us across the timeways to various alternate timelines. They look neat, at the very least, and now we've got an idea of how the rewards and the progression play out. It all ties into a reputation with Sora Dormi, who is the prime consort of Nosdormu. She is based in a new area called Aeon's Fringe. It seems to be kind of like a space outside of space, you know, time outside of time, like a, I don't know, little time pocket. But anyway, it's a funky place. It even has a bar in it where Hearthstone Bob happens to be. Cool. Anyway, from there, we actually, you know, we do those rifts. Now, it's early in PTR, there's, you know, killing mobs to gain progress, and the more you fill up the bar, the more rewards you get. There's like a boss at the end, you know, portals of going through to the various different places. In the testing that Dakor was doing a little bit earlier, just ahead of this video, he killed Murloc Gul'dan in Azmirloth, and then united Murloc Alexstrasza with Alexstrasza. Who knows, perhaps we'll get a timeline where everybody has sausages for fingers too. I mean, they would probably make the reference if they could. Anyway, this stuff is early. We will see how it shapes up over the next few weeks. But each Time Rift location actually has its own themed vendor, and there's an absurd amount to collect. We've got weapons, ensembles, armor pieces, tabards, and those neat paracausal fragment family of trinkets that I talked about in last week's episode. So versus the past, I do think that the world content players are eating good. There is certainly more coming. It's, you know, more than usual. And I'm pretty keen to see some of these like little slices of alternate timelines. There's a Titan Utopia one, and even the idea of having the Horde versus Alliance sort of focused timeline. You know, it's got a vendor with loads of Horde versus Alliance, like classic faction-themed rewards. So, that's what's going on. The live game is getting better because they're doing a really good job of just paying attention to things and hotfixing them and making them better. We would really like it if that affix, though, in Imperial got just a little bit less ridiculous, was applied maybe with a little bit more tact in those dungeons. As we look to the future then, we've got a big new mega dungeon, you know, 8 bosses, 2 wings, eventually it'll be into M+. That does also, on maybe not as much as we expected, because I don't think we expected a big bit of world content, but it actually does seem like we're getting a heavily themed bit of world content that's had quite a lot of effort put into it. That really is all looking quite good. And then again, 10.1.7, that will be our prelude patch, that itself will seemingly have quite a bit, that will then lead us into the Emerald Dream for 10.2. So, as much as unfortunately in a video like this, I do have to talk with you about those meta topics, you know, Bobby and such. It's one of those things, Lore is Axe Staffer in the game, is just talking about, like, listen, you know, you're clapping back at the company and all that stuff's, you know, good, but, you know, being like, I'm not going to play the game, you know, to support the devs. It's like, that doesn't really work for the devs. It's just the kind of thing, you know, there's pretty much shit wherever you look when it comes to, you know, consuming content, right? And there's always those bad incentives and stuff floating around. The best we can do is be aware of them and keep ourselves focused on the actual developers and what they're doing, champion them, and call the bullshit out when we see it, and make sure that people know about it. You just have to be persistent and hold on for long enough. Change can actually happen. Do you remember what they were trying to do with loot boxes over at EA with Star Wars Battlefront 2? And then they reversed that whole thing, and loot boxes have really fallen out of fashion in the industry? We just, you know, we need to stay the course, We need to not get bored of stories after they've broken, but also we can't lose sight that we're into this because we really like games. I see so many people being so doomer about what 2023 is for gaming, but you actually, go to Metacritic and look at all the best games, or OpenCritic even, it's better, all the best games that have came out in 2023, and there's so many of them. Right? Like even, looking at what the new Street Fighter has got in terms of even its single player campaign and how good that is. Just the amount of incredible games coming out, we can't lose sight of that. There is a lot of really good stuff in the industry. It's just, we do have to wade through some pretty shitty news. But it is what it is. We'll get through it together. That's it for things today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Over on Patreon, I got early access to a few of the future videos we got coming up. It is a big, yummy, exciting, fun new month of loot over on Patreon. There's the vlogs from me and all that. So if you want to support, chip in a bit to support what our team is doing and pay those bills, it's down below. Other than that, though, I've got some games to review, and I've got a whole bunch of work on what's next for us to be beavering away at, so that one day I can present it to you, and it's all very exciting. All right, have a wonderful day and a great weekend. I will see you next time.